إخواني الطلبة مساء الخير. Today lecture is about the nervous system, الجهاز العصبي. And as you know, the nervous tissue composed of special cells called the neuron. These are the primary cells of the nervous system, the nerve cells. And there are supportive cells that help to support the system. These are the glial cells and we call the neuralgia or the Schwann cells and the connective tissue cells. Okay, the nerve cells is characterized in shape and function differ from other cells by having several projections. These projections are called the dendrites and one axon, those to receive and send impulses to far organs sites, because the nerve cell main function is to receive impulses, electrical impulses, and send responses again by electrical, so it needs projection like the wires. This diagram here show you the typical, on the right hand side, the typical nerve cell. You see, this is a cell in the center with the projection. There are no other cells in the body that looks like this. Several dendrites to receive and one long axon is to send responses and orders. On the right hand side you see the nervous tissue. There are the neuron cell in the middle and the supportive cells around, the glial tissue cells and the connective tissue cells that support the tissue of the nervous system. The nervous system, what is it? It is a network of cells called neurons. Like the internet, it's a network that transmits signals and coordinate actions between different parts of the body. It receives like the badale of a building or a city. It receives calls and it sends orders. This receiving and sending orders passes through three main activities or a process of three steps: the sensory part, that is receiving; the cognitive part, the thinking or analyzing those impulses that came to the system; and then the motor response, that is the response, the order that is sent according to what the system has received. So sensory part receiving, cognitive part the thinking part, the processing, and the motor part is the response or the order accordingly to the first impulse received. The conduction of stimuli, how those stimuli is conducted, how it is transferred from far away, from the skin to the brain, from the stomach to the brain, from the feet to the brain or to the spinal cord, how it comes. It comes along the axes, as we said, along the dendrites and the axons of the nerve cells, and these are transmitted as electrical impulses, exactly like the impulses in the wires of electricity in your home. Electrical impulses. Okay, these electrical impulses can travel for a distance. Sometimes it has to go from one cell axon to another axon of a cell or a dendrite of another cell, and in what we call a relay station. This relay station, the transmission across is by a chemical stimuli. So the conduction nervous system is by electrical signals through dendrites and axons, and then in the synapses through chemical transmitters like acetylcholine or dopamine. Okay, so two main mechanisms of conductions of the impulses in and out of a nerve cell. Now, the structure of the nervous system. The structure is mainly in two main parts: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central means central, مركزي, رئيسي, and the peripheral nervous system المحيطي أو البعيد. Okay, so central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Now, the central nervous system, it has parts, that is the brain and spinal cord. the brain اللي هو الدماغ, and the spinal cord النخاع الشوكي. The brain is composed of three major parts: cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brainstem. And where it is located, we study anatomy, location inside the skull, in the head, inside the skull, which is a bony box to help to save and preserve the brain, the vital tissue of the brain. The spinal cord is a long rope-like situated inside the spinal canal. It is again a hard bony canal of the vertebral column that harbor the spinal cord. The brain parts are of two hemispheres, control mostly one hemisphere control mostly the contralateral side of the body. This diagram clearly shows the brain at the top and the spinal cord with its parts labeled downward. So this is the central nervous system. We call it the CNS, the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord, the constituents of the brain and the spinal cord. The central nervous system has cavities inside it, and these cavities we call them the ventricles. In these cavities, there is a watery fluid circulating inside these cavities and washing out the outer part of the brain and the spinal cord. We call it the cerebrospinal fluid. This watery cerebrospinal fluid, it helps to bring and distribute nutrition around to the nerve cells, and also it acts as a shock absorber against impacts on the brain, as the brain is practically floating in this CSF. So it is a shock absorber. Now, the coverings of the central nervous system, it has coverings. We call them the meninges, and they are of three different layers. The pia layer, the arachnoid layer, and the dura layer. Okay, the coverings are the three layers: pia, arachnoid, and dura. The dura is a thick and hard sheet that protects the brain and the spinal cord. The gray matter and white matter. These are terms that are used a lot with the central nervous system. The gray matter, it is in a preserved section of the brain and the spinal cord. A preserved section. I mean, at a cadaver in the laboratory. If we cut a section in the brain, you will see the brain of two different colors. The white matter, the dark to the outside, and the white into the inside. The dark on the outside, they call it the gray matter, which indicates the aggregation, the collection of the neurons, of the cells. And the white matter indicates the aggregation and collection of the axons of these cells. It looks white in a section. Okay? So the gray matter is the aggregation of cells. The white matter is the aggregation of the axons, because they contain a lot of fat, myelin sheath. It is white. In the spinal cord on the right hand side, it is the opposite. The cells aggregation is in the center, like H letter, and the white matter is outside to the periphery of the spinal cord. We call them the axons of the cells of the spinal cord. So the gray matter is opposite in the center and the periphery, because the spinal cord is sending the axons to the periphery from the periphery of its section. Now, this is enough for the central nervous system. We said the main part of the nervous system in general, the second main part is the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, that is the far system, the organs that are far away from the center of the body. And these are composed of nerves that transmit the signals from the center of thinking, from the brain and the spinal cord. These are either cranial nerves or spinal nerves. Either cranial nerves or spinal. We'll see what are the differences. The cranial, why we call them cranial? Cranium is the head. The cranium is the head. So the cranial nerves are 12 pairs originating in the brain. They originate in the brain. That's why we call them cranial, in the head. named. They have names for each nerve according to the function they do, because they are assigned to do major functions in the body. So they have names, and they are originating in the brain, and they are usually written in Latin numbers. Latin numbered. You see, not Arabic numbers, but Latin numbers. And you can see them here listed: the olfactory, it is its duty to do the sense of smell. The optic, the second one, is its duty to do the sense of vision, called optic. The oculomotor, the trochlear, and the abducent, the third, the fourth, and the sixth are motor for the eye, movements of the eyeball. Movements of the eyeball, oculomotor, trochlear, and the abducent. The trigeminal, the fifth, is for the sensation of the face. The seventh, the facial, is for the motor for the muscles of the face. These are, we call them muscles of expression. When we get angry, when we feel tired, when we are happy, it looks on our faces. This is by the action of the muscles controlled by the facial nerve, muscles of expression. The eighth, the vestibulocochlear, it goes to the inner ear, responsible for hearing and balance of the body. The ninth, the glossopharyngeal, is for the taste in the tongue, taste. The 10th, the vagus, it is a long nerve. It goes to all the viscera in the abdomen, to the viscera, heart, lungs, GI tract, and other visceral organs. And it usually, it is mostly autonomous. It is autonomous. We should come to that. It is involuntary nerve. The 11th, the accessory nerve, it is a nerve, a motor specialized to the trapezius muscle. Those muscles are on both sides of the shoulder. It has one nerve called the accessory nerve. It is motor. The 12th nerve and the last is the hypoglossal. It is the nerve goes to the tongue, responsible for the motor or movement of the tongue. We know that the tongue has the ninth one, the glossopharyngeal, for the taste, and the hypoglossal for the motor of the tongue, because the tongue is a very important organ in the human body, and it's very important also in animals. It has many functions. The spinal nerves, the other part of the peripheral nervous system, is 31 pairs originating from the spinal cord. You remember the cranial nerves were originating from the brain. The spinal nerves are originating from the spinal cord. They are mostly somatic, to the muscles of the skin, some to the viscera, chest and lungs, abdomen, and the other systems in the viscera, inside the abdomen. Okay, so there are 31 pairs from the spinal cord. This diagram clearly shows the peripheral nervous system, or the peripheral nerves, cranium and spinal. This is only all the other tissues have been removed from the body, the muscles, the bones, so you can see the length and the distribution of the network of these peripheral nerves. This is a picture, an anatomical picture of the peripheral nervous system.